Great. And I'm going to just share my screen really quickly. All I'm going to share is our website. So thank you for joining our Coaching Agile Journeys session today with John Albrecht and Nims. So today we're talking about contracting for change, an ethical approach. Again, I mentioned it's 90 minutes long. I've shared our Coaching Agile Journeys website because you can certainly go here, find all of the things that are coming up, the events that we're doing, and we'll continue posting them as we sign up new speakers. We do have virtual lean coffees monthly, so love to have you join us there. And we do have on the website, as you poke around, you'll find where you can actually donate. We are a group of volunteers, so the logistics and the tooling that we need to be able to support this endeavor do actually come at an expense. So if you're finding value, feel free to chip in and help us out. We'd really appreciate it. And with that brief introduction, I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic over to John, and I'm going to stop sharing. And Nims, of course.
Thank you, Kristen. Thank you. I'm just going to start sharing myself, if that's okay. Yeah, the obligatory, can you see my screen?
Yep. Yeah, looks good.
Okay, cool. Yeah, welcome everyone to Contracting for Change, an Ethical Approach. My name's John Albrecht. I'm a Scrum Master, Agile Coach, and my partner in crime today is?
I'm Nims Dewan, and I'm an org development specialist and a TA practitioner.
Cool. So yeah, this is an interactive workshop, an hour and 30 minutes. We're going to invite you to think about contracting differently. We're going to explore when mismatched expectations occur and what happens when either expectations pass each other by or rupture in relationships occur. And we're going to explore how we can ethically match expectations through effective contracting. And here's an invitation on how we'd like everyone to work together, because this is an interactive workshop. Just want to say again, it's an hour and 30. We'd invite folks to be present and to participate in breakouts if you're able to. If you're not able to, don't go to the breakout, don't get camera on, but just join if you want to, or stay in the main room. Myself and Nims will chat. Share our thoughts and stories in a way that's comfortable. Don't do things out of comfort. Respect each other. Be curious, open, ask questions. Learn what you want to learn, but confidentially leave the context and take the learning, because there may be stories that might be individual within the breakout. So within those, leave the context and take the learning. And we'd like to invite a photo op at the end. But again, if you don't want the cameras on, we do the photo op. We'll edit you out so you are not there at all. But I'm just wondering if that's okay with everyone. I'd invite everyone in the chat. Is there anything else you want and need for us to work effectively together today? Put it in the chat if you need or anything else, or if you agree or disagree to that. Okay.
US Scrum needs to change their name. Fair enough.
Pretty sure. Okay, cool. Okay, cool. Awesome. So yeah, this is an interactive workshop with 2 breakouts and lots of questions. So yeah, my name's John Albrecht. I'm a Scrum Master, Agile Coach, ex-software developer, and I do stuff. I work with teams. You may have seen me on LinkedIn banging on about Scrum Lake, which is an interactive co-creative workshop where we dive deeper into Scrum using a metaphor of a lake to explore concepts and connect learnings to things. I've also got Scrum Builders. I do various other stuff. And my colleague with me today.
I'm an organizational consultant. I'm a TA practitioner. I am not a Scrum Master or an Agile Coach, although John would think that I am, and he would say different. One of the things that I love is working in organizations and seeing the variety and the dynamics in organizations and what really happens in those in-between spaces. What really frustrates me is how some, real simple concepts like contracting can help organizations and teams hugely to kind of overcome some of their issues. So I work with SMEs, leaders, teams to use TA and help them become more effective so they can execute their work more effectively.
So yeah, this is Contracting with Change, an Ethical Approach. an hour and a half, we're going to explore these subjects. We're going to talk about what's TA. We're going to talk about Agile and contracts. We're going to explore mismatched expectations, the K formula. We're going to go to breakout for a quarter of an hour. Then we're going to explore the TA framework for contracting, and then we're going to create some contracting questions again in breakouts, and then we'll come back and we'll share our learnings. So you're going to be in and out of a couple of breakout rooms during this session.
So what is transactional analysis? Give me a quick thumbs up or something or an emoji of your choosing if you are familiar with TA. I've either heard of it, done some work on it. Let's see how many people in the room. Not many. Done some limited work with TA. Okay. So this is just a quick, I can spell it. It's always a good sign. Sometimes I can't. So what is TA? TA is a humanistic, psychoanalytical, and psychodynamic theory. It was created by Dr. Eric Berne, and he takes his work from very much the kind of Freudian psychoanalytical fields, but he felt that it was far too complicated, and he wanted to design something for everybody, so something that's really accessible. It is mainly used in these 4 areas. So personal growth, so how we grow and develop as individuals or as teams or as organizations, how we can use TA to understand ourselves and our own processes. So what goes inside of us, what's our narrative, why do we do the things that we do, why don't we do some things? It gives you language and tools to talk about the relationships we have. And one of the most fundamental relationships we all have is the relationship with ourselves, and then how that transpires to relationships with others, how we see the world, how we see our work, and communication. So the goal of TA is autonomy, which is harnessing awareness, spontaneity, and intimacy. And the fundamental study of TA is what's out of our awareness. What is it that we don't pay attention to? What is it that we have fleeting thoughts about, things that bubble underneath the surface? And often, like, in organizations, we call this the stuff that's, on the underground or beneath the surface. This is very much the place where TA lives and very much where my practice lives. And someone mentioned psychotherapy. Yes, they do use this in psychotherapy. TA has 4 fields: psychotherapy, counseling, education, and organizational. And I practice using the organizational piece. So I don't practice therapy in organizations. I don't have therapeutic work that I do in organizations. I use the same tools, the same understanding, but in an organizational context.
So thank you, Nims. So I'm just wondering, it's a little bit of group work. I'm wondering what comes to your mind when you think of contracts. I'd invite you to reflect for a moment and write in the chat what you think, what comes to mind when you think of contracts. Legal commitment, real estate, opting in, promises, team agreements. There's lots of things coming in, mutual wants and offers, clarifying expectations, statements of intent, boundaries, legal mumbo jumbo, co-creation, lawyers. Sounds formal. Yeah, it sounds formal. All sorts of stuff. TNCs, expectations, assumptions, expectations, clear rules of engagement, lack of trust. Lack of trust. Interesting. Misunderstandings. Yeah, misunderstandings. Interesting stuff. Yeah, a lot of that chimes for me as well, and I see still more stuff coming through on the chat. I'm just going to move on. Yeah, a lot of that chimes for me. And as an Agilist, as someone who got into Agile in 03, 04-ish as a developer, going through a Prince2 transformation and going, what's this? What am I going to do? I just Googled Prince2, there's got to be a better way, and found the Agile Manifesto, found XP, and went, oh, that's good. And then I read it, and it was like, oh, that's brilliant. Yeah, customer collaboration over contract negotiation. That's what, there's people providing contracts and they're telling me to do stuff, and it's not what I want, and I just want to negotiate with them. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation feels really nice. And yes, that is in regards to contracts with customers, and I get that. But in my head over the years, I've, for some reason, or maybe before I even got there, I've always associated contracts as sort of something that's done to me, or something that's annoying, or something that's legal, something that's less than wholesome. It's interesting because this is a contract. We've got a manifesto on the left, so it's contract, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, but it's a contract of sorts of what people expect of each other when we talk about agile. So we're contracting, and that was a form of contract that's been formed, but in that it's customer collaboration over contract negotiation. And I wonder what effects that's had on me and how I see contracts over the years. So I'm going to propose maybe contracts for good. Contracts for good. And what do I mean by that? What I expect and what you expect is what we agree to. And we're effective at collaboration because our effective contracting with each other. We have found out what each other want and need, and we've agreed what that means and what that agrees to. And yes, we're not talking about customers, we're talking about internal contracts, but maybe we could be talking about customers. But yeah, I'm sort of moving to a position more where contracts seem good, and contracts enable collaboration because of the contracting.
So what happens when contracts go bad, and why do they go bad? And I'll do what I did when I did the TA piece. How many people have had, I think people said, misunderstandings or made assumptions, had a break of a psychological contract, hands or emojis or whatever. Can you give us a show of if you've experienced a mismatch of expectations? Yeah, so fair few more people. And one of the things that I want to look at is, why does that happen? And what we can do to avoid it. Well, there you go. Every single job I join. Yeah, in essence, even a psychological contract is a breaking contract. And a psychological contract, when it's broken, is a break of trust. It's a rupture of the relationship. But why does it happen? And it happens because it starts with an implicit contract. I think, Daniel, you mentioned in the chat explicit contracts, which is the way that I work. Yeah. And an implicit contract is a contract which is not clear, or the details are vague, and therefore can be easily misunderstood. So you kind of walk away thinking, I've still got some questions, or you've got, you're kind of scratching your head thinking, I'm not quite sure what that person was talking about or what happened just there. And I know that I personally have walked away from a meeting thinking, what the hell was that about? And not been really, really clear. And I can pretty much guarantee that everyone else in this virtual room has done very similar at some point in their career. And what happens when we have a implicit contract, which is rather vague, is that vague contracts make it easier for either party to say that the contract has been breached. Yeah, so you go from a he said, she said type scenario because there was no clarity to begin with, because things weren't really nailed down, or there were assumptions being made as part of the discussion. So it was very implicit as opposed to putting things on the table. And then you move to double disqualification, where because you've got the perceived breach, it's so much easier for us to blame each other. It's your fault, you didn't do what you're supposed to do. And this comes down to the nature of the contract being easy to violate because of the lack of specificity. And then the other person says, I don't know what you're talking about, or I don't know what happened. And we both kind of go off and think, don't really know what that's about or what really happened. And then we experience a rupture in the relationship. And this is where it gets really tough, where both parties feel as if they have had their psychological contract broken, and therefore the relationship is severed. And then we move to the negative payoff. So what this does is that this process confirms some of our life beliefs. So for this individual, they said that I can't trust people, or I knew this was going to happen. And, you know, the negative feelings linger for both parties. So this is a lose-lose situation. And I think what's really interesting with this is sometimes we set ourselves up for this, because what we like to do is we like to confirm our life positions and our beliefs. So when I said that TA is something, is a piece that focuses on what's out of our awareness, all of this stuff, the K formula, is happening not consciously. It's happening under the surface. And so we're doing all these things, and we're wondering why it happens without any clear language or a framework. And this is what I wanted to present to you, because this will give you a language and a framework to understand and pick about what is happening when we're experiencing either a rupture in a relationship or, you know, a poor contract. And this is kind of how it looks all put together. It's like a little story, a sad one at that, but it does happen. And one of the things I noticed about this, and I was talking to John, is that there are places where you can go in and stop this going forward. So you can, you know, if you're experiencing an implicit contract, there's nothing to stop an individual saying, you know, I'm not really clear on this. Can we go back and, you know, talk about this again? Or if there is a perceived breach, there is a moment that you can stop and reflect with the other person, think what's really happening here. There are always opportunities to intervene, yeah, before you get to number 5. There's even a place to intervene at number 4. Yeah, we can take time to notice the rupture in our relationships and choose to do something about it, rather than let the negative feelings linger. So sometimes it's about stepping forward in choice, which is hard to do, yes, when it's out of awareness. So what we're going to do is we're going to set you off in some breakout rooms. And what we'd like to do is for you in your small groups of, I think, 4 and 5, is to tell your own stories when you've experienced kind of mismatched expectations, specifically working in Agile in organizations or whatever field you work in. And how does your understanding of the K formula help you make sense of what's happened?
So I'm going to create the rooms now. If you don't want to go to the rooms, I'm going to create 6 breakout rooms assigned automatically. If you don't want to go to the rooms, we'll stay here. Myself and Nims will chat for 15 minutes. So we'll see everyone back in 15 minutes time at 25 to. I'm opening the rooms now. Have fun. Interesting.
It is interesting.
It's very interesting, yeah. I think it's fascinating because it links back to my view on contracts. And to be clear, Nims, as well, we're still being recorded in the main room here. So anyone is, everyone else is going to the breakout rooms, but we're still being recorded. So if you just want to listen along, myself and Nims will chat probably for 15 minutes. So when this goes on YouTube, everyone will get a bit of context. If folks want to join in and chat to us, that's cool too. I'm just going to check the rooms and check who's in what rooms.
Some rooms that
some rooms are
emptier than others.
Should I move? I'm going to move people around a bit.
You
move
can.
To room 4. I'm going to move to room 4. Okay. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Room 3's got 3 people. Okay. There we go. There. Room 6. That's okay, isn't it? I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3 in that room. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in that room. 1, 2, 3, 4 in that room.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. So that's okay. Okay, cool. I'm just going to minimize this down and randomly chat. So difficult to do, isn't it, to talk about this stuff? But I think, yeah. Do you have any stories that are safe to share, Nims, for
Do I have
watching
any?
on YouTube?
Yeah, I do have a story. I have a story that features in my CTA actually. And for those who don't know what CTA is, I'm not training to be an accountant. I'm training to be a certified transaction analyst in the field of organizations. And one of the things that the examiners will look for is my ability to contract. And one of the things that I noticed in my work when I was doing a piece of work was that I didn't contract effectively. I contracted effectively with my main client, but I didn't contract effectively with the two people that I was supposed to be working with. So for me, there was an implicit contract that because these two individuals had undergone some OD training, that I would be safe. Yeah, that I would be okay. It turned out that I was not okay, and it was not safe. And we ended up in psychological games, blame, and it became really difficult, really, really hard.
And I think that assumption that we're in a good position because I'm with fellows or peers is a classic one. I know when I'm working with other coaches or other scrum masters, sometimes you just jump into the thing of thinking that everyone's on the same page because we're all like, but that's probably, when you work with loads of other coaches, that's usually when there's lots of like different sort of things and different styles. You kind of want to get clear on why and what you're doing and how you're going to work in that. So yeah, I think contracting at the start of any intervention, working and figuring out what you want to have happen and how you're going to work and what you're wanting to achieve seems super important, especially when working with peers. But it also, the stuff on the agile stuff, it makes me think about when I join an organization as a scrum master or as a coach and what is expected of me and what people expect of me. And I'm working with a team, what I'm expected. I'm quite keen on getting agreement from folks with team doing working agreements and trying to understand where all the pieces fit. But I do wonder when coaches and scrum masters come into organizations, whether we're going into organizations with a clean understanding on the organization and folks in the organization are on the same page as us. So it sometimes feel like maybe we're not lined up with what other people want and need, and
Well, I think the kind of the piece around the assumptions, or they've called me in, so this is what they want me and what I bring, but they might want part of what you bring and they might want something completely different, and it's about how open are we to that, and one since kind of my experience that I just spoke about, one of the things that I have learned is that I don't care who I'm working with or what assumptions that they're making about me and how I work, I will contract with them. And I haven't had any kind of faux pas since. So it's been a great learning experience. It was Brilliant. A faux pas, almost to the point where it was, I had to write about this. Can you imagine writing about this? Contracting is like the cornerstone of TA. Like we just don't do any work without one. And here I was, doing a serious piece of work in an organization without a contract.
But it's like a Johari window as well. And then when it's like the thing that's closest to you don't know. Like when we were building this slide deck, we hadn't put a contract at the start of this slide deck on how we're going to work together. It's like, oh yeah, we should do that. That seems super important because there's going to be people doing some really, really important work working with each other, and they need to know, and people need to have the opportunity.
They also need to know what we expect of them.
Yes,
and we want to know what they want from us, what's going to enable them. And sometimes, that happens and sometimes it doesn't. And if we're going to do a piece of work on contracting, then yes, I think it would make sense for us to contract with the group. So it is like the Johari window, but I also was naive. And I think there is something about naivety around contracting sometimes, or, the emotional piece. When we first start out as coaches or consultants, this part can feel really awkward, and not very pleasant. And sometimes your client might be thinking, why are you asking me these inane questions? But they're really, really important, even though they might not realize it. So I think for me, there was a piece of naivety around it, and obviously the assumptions and the safety, which turn out to be true. But I think this is, very typical.
As you're talking, I'm thinking about TA as well, and I'm thinking about ego states, and I'm thinking about the child, and the playfulness, and that kind of closeness, and we're just, it's like, and then rescuing and playing and all of that stuff sort of mashed together, and then you sort of forget of the
It is very childlike in terms of an ego state, the naivety, and actually to some extent it's quite reckless to not contract effectively,
Yes.
to walk around thinking everything's going to be fine and dandy, when really it isn't, because you haven't done any work, or kind of you made assumptions that things are okay, and actually in fact they're really not. And John, I'm also just thinking about, do we have a timer on how long that they've been in for?
I would check the clock up there. So we've been talking
right.
for 7 minutes. We've got another 7 minutes to go. So
Lovely.
yeah. So yeah, good spot.
Thank you.
I should put something on the clock, really.
Yeah, you should. But
Alexa, set timer for 7 minutes. And hopefully it'll count down. So we've got 7 minutes on the clock. Okay, cool. Sorry, you were saying?
I remember what I was saying. But obviously, I know one of the things that I noticed is with Scrum is that the whole thing about time boxing, and that's also very important from a TA perspective. So there is some commonality there.
There's a lot of commonality.
Lots of commonality. So we start on time because it's about respect. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
It's about respecting people's time, and so we're super conscious in TA about starting our sessions on time and also finishing on time, because it's about the respect of the people that are there, both facilitators and participants.
I recently went on a TA 101 course just to get a bit more. I've read and done things and worked, but just to get a little bit more. And it was lovely. The questions, the poise, the respect. It feels really agile, but really contracted in a really nice way, and it's inclusive, and it's really good work when you do that, which is why I say it feels a bit like agile. It feels like good agile to me, but it's clearly TA's much older, or a little bit older, and there's a history to it. On this question here, stories of when expectations around agile have been mismatched in an organization. I think this is a biggie, and I'm thinking we'll get a lot of stuff. I hope we'll have some people playing back. But yeah, when you go into an organization and you're recruited as a Scrum Master, and you go, right, I'm a Scrum Master. I'm here to serve the team and the organization and my product owner, and you're smiling. And I'm going in, and I'm going. And then you go in and it's not agile at all. And the organization doesn't want you, and the team's okay as they are. It's like, okay, right, okay. And my first instinct, and has been for a number of years now, is like, let's figure out what everyone wants and needs. Let's try and contract and see where things are. But often organizations just want you to do agile to them and kind of make them be agile type thing. And run roughshod over all of that. But then what's my contract to the Scrum Guide? What's my contract? We saw earlier the Agile Manifesto. How do I feel? How am I contracted to that? And how is that in a juxtaposition with my contract with the organization? And maybe the contract I've just signed, and then the informal contract that I have with teams, it's quite messy. There's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, there are. And I think, when Bern originally talked about contracts, he talks about bilateral contracts, and his world was psychotherapy. So of course the bilateral contracts are going to be, really simple, or not really simple, that's the discount, but they're going to be simpler, I think, than organizational contracts where you've got, different teams and different layers of the organization. And you've got stakeholders and product owners and all sorts of stuff, so it becomes a lot more complex to work, rather than kind of psychotherapy. They work at depth with an individual. And organizations have to work at breadth with huge amounts of complexity.
Interesting. I just had a thought. We should probably send a message to the rooms telling them what the questions are, just as a thing. So I'm just about to do that.
Okay.
I'm very clear that I just ignored you there at the end of the sentence, but I just thought of the
That's
team.
okay.
Sorry,
Well,
Nims.
you told me, so that's fine.
Yeah, around agile have. So people are in breakout rooms exploring, telling stories of when expectations around agile have been mismatched in organizations. And then the other message is, how does your understanding of K formula help you make sense of what happened?
You can tell them they've got
Okay.
5 minutes left.
Yeah, there's 5. Yeah,
While you're there.
expires in 5 mins. There we go. Cool. That's done. Brilliant.
Time box
Cool.
expires in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Nice.
You see, it's TA and Scrum, very, very similar. But I know when and when we've done our work before, I've said that, oh, you're a bit like a Scrum Master, Nims. You're a bit like an Agilist, and you'll shake your head, I'm not.
I'm not.
And you're
I
not.
I don't think I am. No.
No, I don't think you are too. But I'm interested in why you're not and what the difference. What do you see the difference between what your field of work is, working in HR, working in organizational development, and doing this work in organizations, and the difference between Scrum Master Agile coaches who are doing that work in organizations, but in like a parallel universe? What's the difference?
I truly don't know what the difference is. I think this is much more of a case of professional identity than anything else.
Mhm.
Would I be seen as a bit of a fraud if I was going to put a Scrum Master next to my name or as an Agile coach? What expectations would people have on me, and knowing, working with software teams, I don't know them, and I have no interest really in that area. So part of it, I think, is maybe that I would feel like a bit of a fraud because it's not something that I've done or worked in. And I think there's a whole thing about, for me, that I don't like to be boxed in. And I feel that Scrum Masters and Agile coaches are slightly boxed in.
Really interesting.
Yeah, because you work, you have the Scrum guide and you've got these things, these rituals and all these, I don't know the terminology, but you know what I'm talking about. Whereas as an organizational consultant, I've got freedom to do random stuff. I don't have to time box if I don't want to. And no one's going to say anything to me. I don't have to do a stand up or all that kind of stuff. I have freedom and choice, and I can do random off the wall stuff with my clients, and it's totally okay for me to do that.
Awesome. Yeah. And the stuff that you do is liberating structures. It's a lot of the stuff.
Yeah.
It's contracting. It's lots of the stuff that we in the Agile world would talk about as being agile.
Yeah.
But you've done it. You've done it for many years. Oh, our time box has expired. Alexa, stop timer. So we should probably bring them back.
We should bring them back, yeah.
So I'm going to bring everyone back. Breakout rooms. I'm going to close all the rooms, and they're all coming back in 60 seconds. And we'll do the usual thing. How fast do people come back based on, have we got the timings right? Oh, they're still talking.
They're still talking.
They're still talking. So
I love it when they don't come back.
Sign over. It's such a good sign. It's glorious. Like, oh my God, I want to keep on talking.
It hasn't been a good breakout session when you're hurrying, everyone comes back really quickly. But yeah. But I think obviously the whole thing about professional identity and all that kind of stuff, that's a whole different workshop. Yes,
maybe that's the next one. Are people coming back? Are they not coming back yet?
It says all breakout rooms will close in while the countdown's happening, so.
Okay, cool.
I'm hoping that people will.
Or maybe they've all gone. I don't know. Maybe that's it.
Well, they're.
Oh, here people come back.
Here people come back. There we go.
Hello. Hello.
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
Hey,
it's always a good sign. Hi, Stuart. It's always a good sign when folks don't come back straight away at the end of a breakout session. Brilliant. So yeah, hopefully that was fun and interesting and insightful. Again, if folks want to put to the channel, put out like what your observations are, maybe throw some things to the chat, what were the mismatched expectations that you've seen, and how can you make sense using the K formula? And then maybe we'll invite for people to sort of share their observations, just bearing in mind that this is a recorded session and we'll be putting this on YouTube. So you might want to anonymize and just be safe about it. But yeah, put things to channel. Yeah, what things came up for you? Where were the mismatched expectations? And how do you make sense of that using K formula? Good and deep. Maybe I shouldn't have asked everyone to type because there's so much stuff. It's like,
Well, either that or they don't know how to put it in there without giving stuff away.
Maybe someone would like to share. Is anyone in a position to share anything that was discussed in a safe way and sort of, yeah, mismatched expectations and making sense? Would someone like to share?
And some stuff in the chat now.
Okay, cool.
We spent a fair amount of time talking about sort of the degree of commitment that Daniel mentioned Mark Burgess, right?
Mm-hmm.
His promise theory and the point that a promise can't actually be a commitment because there's too many things in the world that we don't control. It's really just a clear statement of intent. And we spent some time talking about that and about how, as we become more clear about integrity and about the meaning of our promises, that we tend to perhaps promise fewer things, but be more serious about delivering on them.
Promising fewer things. And interesting. Anyone to add a takeaway from what Mark said? I'd like to share.
One thing as I listen to Mark, is about what are the promises that we keep to ourselves and execute versus the ones that we do with other people. So what is the contracts we have with ourselves, and therefore what type of contracts do we make with other people?
That's a super interesting idea around, for example, punctuality.
Mm-hmm.
If you show up on time, you're actually keeping a promise to yourself as well as a promise to the others. And they're kind of the same thing, the same commitment, right? You're respecting your time and the time of other people all at once.
Yeah.
If you are on time.
Yeah. But what's really interesting is that where do we learn that, and why is that important to us? What values do we instill in ourselves that we do that? Because not everyone is punctual.
Mm-hmm.
We don't all time box.
Right. In cultures, not all cultures value the strict punctuality.
Mm-hmm.
But many do. So it's interesting. I asked one fellow who came to one of my presentations. He actually wanted to learn something from me. He was a terrible student, the worst student I ever had. I asked him, "You're so direct, don't you just repel people?" And he said, well, yeah, I repel people, but not people who value their time because they run, not people who run things because they value their time. And I never forgot he told me that, and it really hit me. And that guy was never late. He was always quite punctual.
So I'm wondering if anyone's got any more stories around agile and mismatched expectations with agile and making sense of that using the K formula. Anything came up for people who'd like to share?
One of the things we talked about was it was sort of a consistent theme in the different stories we shared, was the sort of the two drivers of failing to get explicit. One was efficiency, right? Like the time it takes to like dig into all the things that we might differ on. And then the second was the pain that it can take to dig into all the things that we differ on, right? So it's the time, and then also like, do we really want to dive into that hornet's nest right now and perceiving it to be that way, and assuming well, if we just get things going and we're all adults, it'll be fine. But you hit the hornet's nest, it's like a slow roll into it versus right up front.
I kind of want to riff on that a little bit, because I think a lot of times we enter into contracts that we don't feel we have the opportunity not to accept, so that the opt-in aspect of contracting is missing. Like, I really need to eat next month and this person's offering me a gig, or my boss just said, go make, I mentioned this in our breakout, one of the worst implicit contracts I know in agility is the boss saying, go make those people agile.
Mhm.
Because if he doesn't get agile, if leaders don't go first, nothing's going to work. So there's an implicit contract that's very common in agility and profoundly broken.
Mhm. Agreed.
This is deep stuff. It's tough stuff.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's also interesting that you make an individual, so make these people or make this person agile. Whereas agile is, agile organization, right? It's how you make an enterprise or company as
It's a we thing.
it's a we thing, yeah. And of course, people are, of course, naturally adaptive and agile, but to a different degree. Maybe some are maybe more or less less eager to change or more resisting to change than others. But yeah, go make people less resisting to changes.
Well,
definitely an example of a bad.
yeah, because I work in criminal justice, and we're not going to make anybody anything, that they don't want to be. And so I think that's a good point, is that we often say meet people where they are and either go together or take them where they want to go, and not necessarily where we think they want to go, because that might change as well. So I think that's about contracts. It's kind of like a dance, If we talk about intentions, those are intentions, then it's the real unfolding of those decisions and the adherence to those contracts and those agreements that really matters. You can make a contract all day long, but we used to order people, court order people to do things. Well, and the judge is not that powerful, because he can't make people do things just by ordering it. So I think that's the permission, and the willingness to.
Yeah.
That's where the agreement comes in. So.
It's going back to the example of make these people agile. That's also from a TA perspective extremely parental.
Right.
And what's going to happen from an ego state, from using TA, is that your child ego state is going to reject that or rebel completely, because they are being made to do something that they inherently are not bought into. And therefore, that's why contracting is so critical, is that you need all three of your ego states at the table and in alignment, because without it, you're not going to go anywhere.
And if I, as a coach, adopt my child persona and agree to supposedly go do that, instead of adopting my adult and saying, and meeting that leader where he or she is, and saying, well, here's where we are. What do you want to do with that?
That's hard if someone's taking a parental ego state and then you're meeting them. There's that we're linking into Scrum values and courage and being adult. And then maybe if you do that, you'll be misinterpreted as a parent in the situation and that person. And we've got all sorts of interesting dynamics going on. But yeah, it's interesting. So I'm wondering, is there anything else anyone wants to add or take away? Maybe the thing that we were talking about was what happens when you go into a brand new organization. I signed a contract. I'm going to go into an organization and work with them. You go in, yeah, I'm going to do this work with them. Everyone wants me and we're going to help this team. And then you discover that maybe what you're going into isn't quite what you experienced. Does that ever happen to anyone? I was wondering if... And how does that work? That never happens. Does anyone have any stories? Maybe they're too close. I don't know.
I joined as a Scrum Master only through me, they kind of learned what Scrum really was, and then they learned that maybe that wasn't what they really wanted. So, and then they kind of, it can't, well, we don't want to be Scrum like that. We just want to be more agile about it. So can't you just be an agile coach? So we'll pay you extra. Yeah. So, but yeah, all the stuff about empiricism and all of that, that won't work for us. So we just need the events. Yeah. So it didn't take me very long to decide to go somewhere else. And it was a good thing, I think, for them as well.
I have something to add. One of the things I've been doing recently is I've been getting agreement in writing on word definitions. So we go to the Scrum guide and we go through the Scrum, and then we go, when we say Scrum, we mean like what this says right here. And you would be surprised at how hard it is to get people to agree to that. I mean, it was kind of shocking to me. And then also the words agile, right? So I point to the manifesto and said, this is a good enough agreement. A good enough definition. Let's use it for now. Oh no, they don't want to do that. So that was quite eye-opening to me, that word definitions are agreements, and you can't really get agreement about word definitions in a lot of companies. The most basic thing, right? Just for a week or a month, can we just use this definition? No.
It's tough, and I think we're probably in a position to move on, but I'm wondering as well, yeah, the simple stuff seemed difficult to contract on, but then you go into an organization and maybe what's my contract and my contract with the Scrum Guide and what I understand, and if everyone else's definition of all those things is, then I'm out of kilter with that, and what's my contract in this? So I seem to be contracting to Scrum and Agile, but other people aren't, and
Right.
You meet them where you are and all of that jazz, and what people really want to have happen. It's all interesting. But before we move on, does anyone want to add or take away from any of these things?
Hey, John, it's funny, even the simplest of contracts, like the team agreement, is difficult. I mean, because, people agree what they think they agree to, and then lo and behold, you end up having to say, hey guys, remember what we agreed to?
Yeah.
When we think about it in terms of that simple of a contract being misunderstood or not adhered to, when you start looking at these larger, very complex, multi-page, volume contracts, it's no wonder there's difficulty there.
And I know we've got to move on, John, but just pick up on that. Sometimes contracting happens in that way because it would be easier for them. Yeah, so they're just saying things because they think it's what you want to hear, as opposed to what they really want. And sometimes they don't know what they really want, or it's not really safe to ask for what they really want, and therefore they might be just saying things, and they're contracting from a very different place, because they think that if I just say this, we can just tick a box and move on and be easier.
Can I highlight one more thing, John, before we move on?
Mm-hmm.
Just that something that Daniel kind of implied, and something we all know for Agile practitioners, and that is it's easier to get an explicit contract if you make it for a very short term. And that's a better play than a squishy contract for a long term.
Brilliant. Interesting.
Yeah, well, I used a technique called tacos with a team, which is tiny accomplishments and commitments. So just very small things that help build trust, like, everybody cleans their desks, or hey, we agreed to end the meeting on time, or we start the meeting on time. Very easy things to live up to, just to kind of because if you start with a team agreement and it's being broken already within 1 or 2 weeks, it becomes like people already lose faith in the team's ability to kind of form these agreements and stick to that. So just to start small and keep it short, what Mark is saying, I think, is quite powerful.
Thank you. Thanks, Jord. And yeah, we do need to move on, but before we move on, anyone want to add a takeaway from any of those things before we move on? Cool, I'm going to move on. Thank you, everyone. That was really fascinating, and thank you for working together on that. Nims.
Back to me. So while you were all off talking about the K formula and your examples, one of the things that I shared with John is that for me as a TA practitioner, contracts are the cornerstone. So I don't work without a contract. And I use this as a framework for contracting. And I'm just going to kind of walk you through it before we unleash you through another activity. So historically, when Ben created kind of his formula for contracting, he said that we need to contract on 3 different areas: the administrative contract, a professional contract, and a psychological contract. And I have added environmental. I think other people have added lots of other things like political, various other pieces, because we work in an organizational context where all of these things matter. So from an administrative perspective, it is really that simple. It's about what administrative tasks do we need to think about to execute our work and strategy, whatever that might be. So, it could be really boring things like, who needs to be invited, who's going to send the emails, kind of really detailed bits, when am I going to get paid, terms and conditions. These all are part of an administrative contract. Okay. And to me, this is kind of really basic and simple, and often kind of the easiest piece to take care of. Then we move on to a professional part of the contract. And this is about what's the actual work we're doing here together. So what am I here for? What do you need? What's the scope of work? What's the end goal for the client? That is the professional piece about what you're there to do and what the client expects from you and what you're going to be delivering. Simple. Yeah. And then this is where it gets really interesting, which is the psychological part of the contract. And in TA terms, the psychological part of the contract is often also known as the unsaid part of the contract. So what is it that we're not saying, either the client or the consultant, that's going to inform how the contract goes? And it is often the psychological part of the contract which actually is played out. So therefore, going back to the K formula, if your contract is implicit or vague or, made with assumptions, it's not going to be a good contract for you to work from. And your psychological contract does include things like, I wonder what the sacred cows in this organization are. What are the myths and beliefs of this organization? What is it that my client really expects from me? How do we work together and ensure that our relationship doesn't get severed? What is it that I might do to piss off my client, and vice versa? So this is about strengthening that relationship and, taking it from being implicit and making it explicit. And therefore that could be quite uncomfortable if you're not, practicing in this type of way, but it can be incredibly liberating as well. And I think clients really enjoy this piece. I also test my client's version of reality, right? What is it that they really want, and can they really achieve it? Sometimes, they want us to make the organization agile, and I might say, do you really think I can make anyone do anything? What power do I have? What power does the organization have? So all of these really sticky parts of the contract that no one really wants to talk about is the stuff that we as TA practitioners talk about. And then we move on to the environmental contract, which is quite similar to professional contract, but I like to separate it. So working in organizations is working in often, a messy, complex environment. And it is about thinking about, what else is occupying the client's time? Yeah, what else is happening in the organization that I need to be aware of? What can derail the work that we're doing internally and externally? Is this organization going to be bought out? Is it under, severe financial issues, for example? So what is some other stuff that can begin to impact how we're working, what we can do? So often this piece is about looking at the connections, the implications that might impact our work. So horizon scanning is what I like to consider the environmental part of the contract, because sometimes what I notice is that I haven't really accounted for these and stuff has blown up in my face. So therefore I thought, actually, I need to start accounting for the complexity of the environment that I'm working in and my client is working in, because we don't work in a closed system. We work very much in an open one.
Yeah.
So yeah, off the back of all of that, we're going to invite you again to go to breakout rooms. And in those breakout rooms, we'd like you to discuss what contracting questions would be useful. And those are questions that would address administrative, professional, psychological, and environmental. There's also a Padlet, which is a bit like Trello, but you can store recorded information in there. And there's a link, Nims is going to put it to the chat. Would invite you to put those contracting questions into Padlet under the right environment, and we'll share those questions to everyone at the end of this workshop, so people have access to all of those questions. So I'll say again, for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, I think. For 15 minutes, we're going to send you back to your breakout rooms, and we'd love you to discuss what contract. I can't delegate you to anything, but would invite you. Sorry, Daniel's on the call. I'd invite you to discuss what contracting questions that would be useful for you, and they're administrative, professional, psychological, and environmental. Any questions before I create the breakout rooms?
Yeah, can people open the link? It will work in Chrome.
I was able to.
Okay.
And
Perfect.
just, John, I'm not sure if you were planning on using the same breakout rooms, but we've lost about 10 people since the original total. So
I'm going to open the rooms. I might need to reallocate people just if there's rooms, merge two rooms. Okay, but thank you. I'm going to open the rooms now, and we'll take it from there. See you in 15 minutes at 1:15-ish. Okay. So I'm going to move to room 4. And I'm going to move. Daniel, do you want me to move to your room? Are you okay?
I'm actually cool staying here with you because I want to talk with you two for a minute.
Okay. Yeah, of course. I'm just going to move some people around in the rooms.
Yeah,
I've got
totally.
2 people in the room. I'm going to move. I don't want to split them. I'm going to
Totally.
move.
I mean, go ahead.
They're all balanced.
Oh, just split them.
I'm going to split
They're
them.
fine.
Oh no,
They're
I'm going to
okay.
move. Hang on, I moved into the wrong room. That's bad. By the way, everything is still being recorded. So Daniel, Nims, everyone on here, we are still on YouTube, or we will be on YouTube later.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, I'm just going to move someone else across as well. Okay, everyone's in a room now, so that's cool, awesome.
And you could pause it, and then you could start it when people come back if you like.
We could do. Do you want it to be paused, Daniel, or are you okay?
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Okay.
I just think it's a fascinating topic, and I'm looking at it through your lenses, like the parent, adult, child thing. And I was just like, I don't know if you saw the steam coming out of my ears when I was considering that lens. So this is really rich for me. I'm really enjoying myself here.
Good. I'm
Yeah.
glad.
Thank you, Daniel.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Have you come across the ego states in the past? I'm going to bring up the ego states on the right.
There they are.
Yeah, the question I had is like, do they overlap? Like, can a parent act like a child, or can a parent act like an adult?
Okay, so
Right.
here's the messy bit about ego states. In reality, we're never going to really know. So, okay. Ego states form because of how we learn and what we see. Yeah, these are storages of our experiences. Yeah, so in the parent, we store experiences that we see from other people. Yeah.
Okay.
So your parents, your teachers, leaders, all of their kind of stuff is stored in our parent. And in our child, we store how we experience ourselves, our own experience. Yeah. So what becomes really interesting is when you get an adult who is maybe a mom or a dad, yeah, and they're parenting their kids, but they're really reckless. So they've got no boundaries, they just do whatever. They don't set any rules or times. And some people, they might think, actually, this is really reckless as a, type of parent. People thinking, why are they doing this? But as a child, this is what they have learned. Yeah. They have learned to parent from a very childish perspective because that's what they saw from their parents.
Sure.
So they think that this is a parent thing to do, where actually in reality it's not, because parents have rules and they set boundaries, and it's about your ethical standpoints and all those kind of things. So it can be really confusing, because we don't know what's lurking in someone's past. But traditionally, I think if you're looking for kind of where to go next, functional ego states are based on very much on the behaviors. So you might have heard kind of things like, a critical parent, or a structuring parent, or a nurturing parent, adapted child, rebellious child, free child. These are based on the ego states model, but are very much behavioral based as to what we can actually see and hear from kind of what we notice in other people.
Okay.
So that might be a good starting point if you're looking specifically at the behaviors internally. However, whether they're a parent, child, or an adult is a different story. So there's some added complexity there.
And what's this K? Pardon me, John, go ahead.
No, please go ahead, Daniel.
The K formula, I don't know if you referenced what it was before, but I'm not, I'm familiar with Cartman, but not this terminology.
Cartman's, so this is such a obscure piece of TA theory. Not even a lot of TA theorists would have come across this piece of work.
Okay.
So Cartman's best known for his work on the drama triangle.
Right.
And I know lots of people know that kind of stuff, but he created this piece off the back of Eric Berne's G formula, which is kind of his formula for games, and it's a hideous one. I've done a drawing of it somewhere, and it's, to me, it's hard to wield or to use, and that's why a lot of people just use Cartman's work on the drama triangle.
Yeah.
Much more easier. It's much more clear to understand. However, when I came across this, I thought this speaks to so much of my own experience in working in organizations, and so much to, I think, how contracts are formed and broken. And that's why I started to use this piece of work in kind of, workshops and, my own work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm definitely going to look that one up because it's new to me. It's so interesting, the ego state stuff, parent, child, and adult that you put up. We'll talk about organizations. The first organization we have membership in is our family.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
So we've got to be importing a lot of that stuff.
Oh yeah. So the last CAJ talk I did, I covered ego states, and the talks Where Have the Settlers Gone, a story about enterprise, where I talk about ego states and I talk about drama and the effects in organizations. It's a couple of years ago now, but off the back of that, I started working more with NIMS. But yeah, we pick these up, and Byrne talks about picking the parent, adult, child ego states up to about the age of, parent and child ego states up to about the age of 5. And NIMS is going to keep me honest here because she is she's working with this. But yeah, we pick it up, but it's intergenerational. It passes through. It's how culture gets passed. So we get what the parents say comes into the parents, but what we experience as children is our child. So you can see how this links with trauma and various other stuff. But this is how culture and how things, this is how Byrne theorizes that culture and things get passed between generations, and they pass along. So within your head, and we see it here, we've got the 3 circles: the parent, the adult, and the child. Within the parent, you have other parents. So there's a hierarchy: parents within parents within parents. And back to Nim's point around the purpose of TA, which is awareness of self, because when you're aware for yourself and aware of others, you can change that thing, and you are not your life script. This all forms something called a life script. But if you're aware of it and you do that self work, which TA is ultimately about, it's about awareness of self and others, you have that greater awareness and you can change your script, and you can understand when you're in a parent, when you're in a child, and you can do that work on yourself and understand things. The thing I find about TA is when you start reading and watching and listening and doing stuff, it's like, oh gosh, there's a whole raft of knowledge and experience here, and there's people who have been working with HR for many, many years doing this stuff, and agilists don't necessarily have the awareness of this stuff.
Yeah, it's so true. When you read up on something like this and you go like, when you have the aha where you go, oh, that's why I do that. You're like, oh shit, you know, you have that moment of stunning clarity about some pattern that you've been exhibiting for a long time. And you're like, okay, there's a whole theory around this that explains that behavior.
Yeah.
You know,
TA is you know, the theory of how you've come to be where you are, the patterns that you exhibit, that you hold, your personality structure, you know, why we do the things that we do. This gives it, you know, beautiful, clear language, and you know, that's why it's so easy to grasp. And yeah, there have been, I love your saying moments of clarity, but moments of clarity that have left me rocking in a dark room sometimes about why I'm doing stuff. If you want to know more about the drama triangle and where I picked up the K formula, I actually found it on this really obscure French counseling website, and I've dropped the link into there, so you can have a look at that. That's where I got it from. Because I, you know, like I just stumbled across it randomly when I was taking notes.
Cool. Yeah, that's. See, when you send me off like this, I'll actually read. Like this is like what is that? TLDR. Too long didn't read. I'll actually read the whole thing. You know.
Yeah.
So you know, that's what I do. So you're actually, I'm kind of a junkie for this stuff. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
And the thing that surprised me, because we talk about Eric Byrne and TA, but Stephen Cartman's alive, isn't he? He's working on this stuff at the moment, and he's adding to this body of knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And lots of people are adding and expanding, and you know, that's one of the beauties of TA, whereas I can take a piece of theory and I can say, well, I don't quite like it like that, and I amend it and create something totally of my own fashion.
Mm-hmm.
And that is equally accepted by my community. And so I've taken many models and mashed them together, or taken them apart and created something really unique that works for me and my clients.
Yeah, so much. I put this word mimesis in the chat. So much of what we do as humans as children in particular is mimicry. We look at what adults do and we just do it like them, or other children, and do what they do. And you know, that plays out, I think, in organizations as people project their family onto the org. You know, like I'll tell you a story. I was big on teaching my children how to think, not just what to think. So they would come to me and want to do something like go to their friend's vacation on the weekend or something to New Hampshire. And I'd say, well, I'll need 3 good reasons. So do you have 3 good reasons? And of course, nobody can come up with 3 good reasons. So they would leave crying, you know, but then they would huddle and regroup. And the one that was making the request would talk to the other 2 and say, you know, he wants 3 good reasons. What can we come up with here? And they would come back with 3 like moderately good reasons. And I would say yes, because they were moderately good. And Roberta, my wife, would say, you're letting them argue with you. I'm like, yeah. She's like, and they're winning. I'm like, yeah. She's like, well, that never happened in my house. I'm like, well, in our house, it's going to happen a lot because we're going to teach these kids how to think, you know, and that's what we did. And then she had some other things that she wanted in terms of, you know, a vision of the future. You know, she had a vision of the future about what she wanted, and we worked towards that, and that became a sort of guide stone towards what we were teaching them. And I'm pleased to report that I do enjoy my adult children, you know, because they think pretty clearly, and they're fun to be around. And I think it has to do with teaching them how to have 3 good reasons for what they're asking for.
Are you also teaching them about power inadvertently?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
you know, in traditional family systems, it's always the parents that have power and they
That's-
exercise it.
The problem is that you could create cult candidates from that.
Yeah.
That are a little too differential to authority. And, you know, I mean, deference to authority is important, but too much of it can be really bad for your health.
Yeah, but in also tradition, that's how we learn about power is in family systems, and you know, we
Right.
learn about it in educational systems, you know, student and you know, teacher, and then we learn it in organizational, you know, it's all of these things are getting reinforced.
Yeah.
I think what you did is different. Is if you provide me with 3 good reasons, then you can go. And I do very much the similar with my son. I was like, okay, if you know, if you want to recontract with me on your bedtimes, yeah, you need to give me a good reason why. And you know, he piped up and saying, well, mummy, I'm older now. And I'm like, okay, that's a good enough reason. You know, he's 7.
Yes.
So I mean, like,
Beautiful.
yeah, if you can, you know, provide me with a reason why you think it's a good idea, then I'm not going to stand in your way. And I think, you know, providing choice and teaching children about power and that they can exercise it if they wish to through knowledge and logic, then I think that's wonderful.
Yeah. And it's that's a great story that you tell there about your 7-year-old. And one of my daughters has 2 other daughters, and she's constantly making deals with them.
So, Nims, I'm spotting folks are coming back to the main breakout. We're over the hour, so I'm wondering, I've just sent a message, we'll close the rooms in a couple of minutes time. So I'm just wondering whether we close them now, and then, because I'm seeing the numbers are down, we're down to a smaller number, yeah. So
okay, yeah,
understandable as we're over an hour. So okay.
Well, when they
see
come
what
back,
happens.
after they come back later on, I'm going to send you an email. I'm going to look you guys up and send you an email. And I really want to discuss how we might be able to collaborate further around this topic, because I think it's a really, really important topic that could promote progress and understanding,
definitely.
like genuine progress. It's a tremendously important topic. And I'm so
huge.
glad to see that you're bringing it up, and I'm totally enjoying your presentation and learning a lot.
Awesome. And
Thank
we're
you.
very happy to have you, and we love to work with you, and we look forward to seeing that email, Daniel. Welcome back, everyone. I thought I'd bring people back a little earlier because although some people are still talking, because people come back to the main room and they're way over the hour, and it can be tricky. So, but yeah, cool. How was that? Have we got questions? Have we got things coming up, Nims? Do we have stuff? Oh, I've put you in a room.
Yeah, we've got with some
Uh-oh.
so
Everyone's coming back.
I'm happy. No,
Okay.
I'm here.
You're here. You've kind of frozen slightly. So yeah, hopefully that was useful to everyone and interesting. You're back. Okay, that's cool. Awesome. So yeah, feedback and reflection. How do we want to? This is over to you, Nims, but maybe your internet's gone down at the wrong time. You there? Hello.
I think can you hear me?
We can hear you just about. Yeah. I might turn off your video.
Okay.
I'm going to stop your video and see if that helps it. No.
You to take over.
No, I think you're coming back now. Are you still? It sounds like hello? Can you hear me now?
We all got so used to that.
I can hear you.
Perfect.
Yes.
We can hear you. Yay. Okay, cool. Let's go for it. I'm going to pass over to you.
Pass over back to me. So yes, it's great, by the way, to see a full Padlet, but how did you find that activity? Good. Any thoughts or reflections?
It's really interesting as an exercise to see what other people were putting down and get quite a lot of inspiration, or not about things that I would ask, but actually things that that I have asked that I would have forgotten to share. So that was quite nice to have those drawn out of the depths of my memory.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. I looked at some of the questions there, and yes, we will share the content of the Padlet. That's the beauty of it. So we'll do a download of it, and you'll be able to see all of the questions that everyone has compiled. But yeah, I think even some of those questions, I think, oh, that's a really good question. What's off the table? And the psychological one is really, really great. Anyone else want to share or add?
I'll go again and say that there was also quite a lot there.
Which one did you find?
So yeah, which one did you find interesting? So Zoe, which column? What were you working on? What were the questions?
Sorry, I was about to say that there was some that I wouldn't necessarily have thought of asking, just because it's not necessarily what I do. But yeah, really useful to pick up on those as well. Lots of value from the crowd.
Also, it was quite interesting how maybe one of the areas that I found difficult to think about the questions around this, maybe the psychological side, because it's, as Nims was saying before, it's the unsaid bits that maybe they're the harder questions to ask. But then someone in the group found that they were putting all their questions in that column because they work in that sort of behavioral coaching space. So that was quite interesting.
That is interesting. Does anyone think differently or similar to that? I want to add a takeaway from any of those things. Maybe people worked in there. Were you aligned to different columns or not?
I found surprising, just looking at the, let's say, team dynamics, how different teams, allow me to say, solve the problem in different ways. Some people started probably from, I'm guessing, from what was from the top of their head, what was attracting more their attention. We started in ordered fashion from left to right, picking administrative first, time boxing, so a very rigid approach if you want. So it doesn't specifically talk about the questions, but just in where the attention of the people felt.
Cool. And does anyone? Sorry.
I was just going to say, I found for me the psychological environmental questions are the important ones, and I found those harder to craft, and I believe they probably bear a lot of attention because they're getting at the stuff that's going to torpedo you, right?
Yeah.
In a way, Mark, I found it almost the opposite. It's almost the opposite for me. I care very little about the rest, and that has probably caused me troubles in the past. I almost dismiss it as details. I'm going straight to the hard stuff, what I'm really concerned about. And sometimes you should be doing the opposite. Taking care of the simple things, which are also the ones that you would face every single day. And I'm guessing there's someone else who falls in the middle, asking some of the things that they're concerned about, but not all of them, maybe cushioning them, making an implicit question. That's maybe, if I can share, I didn't see any implicit question. They were all very clear and to the point. There was nothing sugar-coated.
It shouldn't be. That's the aim. That's the aim of a good contract, is that it doesn't have any pieces.
We're still losing.
Nothing is.
Unfortunately, we're losing you, Nims. I'm going to stop your video as well a little bit. you're breaking up. What were you saying again? That sounded cool. You said it's important.
I said that, gosh, I can't remember what I said now. I think it's important not to, I think the whole idea is that it should be direct. And if we begin to sugarcoat things, you distort the reality of what it really is. And when you distort the reality of what it really is, then that means that you're kind of developing a poor contract, yeah, which is quite vague, or maybe Buffy doesn't have the kind of the level of detail or what the current reality is showing. You'll kind of be working off assumptions to a certain extent.
Mhm.
Okay.
And yet, in my experience, that's what I usually hear. That would be the approach I would have had in the past. In interviews, that's the typical approach that you would have. We are probably afraid of asking the wrong question, and with that, wasting an opportunity. And so you think you've asked the question, but you didn't really ask it, or not in the right way.
I think you can feel like you're on a knife edge sometimes, asking people to confront the reality of their situation. You never quite know how they're going to react to the uncomfortable truth. I think that's why a lot of us struggle to go into that psychological, that unspoken column. It can be very messy to get people to stop arguing with reality.
And I think part of it is they don't want to say it and we don't want to hear it. So I think there's two things that are happening that stops us asking, because we discount them and their ability to know what the reality is and our ability to hear it.
And also we might be forced to confront our own reality as well.
Yeah, exactly.
And now in the past, I sort of would sugarcoat questions or like put it in something to make it like okay, more palatable. But am I doing it for them or am I doing it for myself? And yeah, it's interesting. It's really interesting.
I think that's one of the first things that we need to be aware of, is whose needs, when we're asking a question, whose needs we are serving. Am I doing this for my benefit, or am I doing this for yours, or for the teams, or for the organizations? If it's only for my benefit, then do I need to ask that question? Can I answer that on my own?
Awesome work, everyone. Does anyone want to add or take away from any of those things, or maybe point at any questions, anything that kind of comes up for you that you'd like to add or take away at this point?
Well, there's one thing. I'm sorry, go ahead, please. Go ahead.
There was one question under environmental that I thought was very interesting, and I'm sure it needs a bit more explanation, and that's what's small enough that it won't activate the organization's immune response.
That's definitely a psychological question.
You want to hear more about that one? That was mine.
Was it?
And it's something that came up in some work I was doing with a friend in a very difficult environment, and approaching it agilely and trying to deliver value in small chunks. We literally asked ourselves that question.
And I heard a few other people, thank you for sharing. I heard a few other people maybe wanting to add maybe a question or something that was an interest they want to talk to a bit of.
Well, one of the things I just wanted to say from some other training that I got, I don't know what the name of the technique is, but you tell the other person how you feel about what you're about to tell them. So you say, I'm really afraid that after I tell you this, you're going to be angry, and things aren't going to be the same after I tell you this. So I'm a little concerned about that. And then that sets them up to actually listen to what you have to say, because you've revealed some of your inner dialogue about, getting ready to say this thing. And I use this on an executive, and as soon as I started in with it, he goes, okay, come on, just lay it on me. Give me, what is it? Come on. And of course, that's exactly what I wanted, right? So you might want to try this. It worked out pretty good. I've been using it a lot lately. various communications. I found it to be pretty effective. I picked it up from something called Radical Honesty.
I find that really fascinating because I think I've purposely tried to do the opposite lately, where I've gone into a contracting situation and rather than saying that I think that there's a problem or a breach of contract, I've chosen not to start there and to go in with almost like a fresh start. What is it that you need? I'll tell you what I need and how we want it to be like, rather than, and I have wondered, because I ummed and ahed, if I don't go in there and say, oh, you know, I think we're not on quite the same page, or you might not like doing this, or something along those lines. I was wondering whether we're sort of set, you know, it will come across more negative, kind of, you know, make the other person feel as though, oh, right, there's a problem, rather than going in.
Yeah, I think the way they taught it to me, the way I understand it, is that you reveal what's going on in your inner dialogue, the one that no one hears but you, about how you feel about what you're about to say.
Yeah.
To them, that you feel they might be mad or, you know, otherwise get upset or whatever, and that's, if you do that, you know, then you are speaking honestly, because it's about your inner dialogue, not what you're, you know, assessing.
Yeah.
I think there's two things to that. You're not presenting it as their problem. You're presenting it as something you have an issue with. And the other thing is you get a yes before you get a no, because they say, yes, tell me. And that's what I experience very important when you enter a new relationship, to get that first yes. Yes, tell me. Yes, I invite you to share. Yes, I see you have a concern. Yes. So you want a yes, not a no first. And if you enter with, we have a problem and we need a solution, you propose a solution, you get a no to that solution, then you're in the negative space.
Yeah.
You
have to recover from, so that's.
Yeah, and they never agreed to your version of we either.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So you're actually
yes.
drafting them into a we that they never agreed to.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm sorry, Elizabeth.
No worries. Go ahead.
So I think I want to add one other thing I've used is nonviolent communication in this, where you make an observation, feeling needs, requests, and going through that thing as a thing of getting in cleanly, and clean language is another way in as well. But these are all other stuff. So, yeah, I want to say thank you. I think we're definitely over time, but yeah, an hour and a half we're coming up on now. But yeah, I'm just going to keep on going. So we've done this one. Yeah, Nims, back to you. Are you back?
I am back. I hope so. So I just want to take a minute, because that's what I've got probably in less than that, to share with you kind of some of my learnings on working in organizations and using TA to contract. And I mean, visually, you can even notice that where I have some of the biggest issues, or where I've seen the biggest issues, which is the psychological element. A lot of you have talked around some of the stuff and asked questions about it. So I think one of the important things I want to mention is that work with a contract where it's good enough to start. It doesn't need to be perfect, but it needs to be good enough. Okay, you and the person that you're working with will decide what good enough is. So, you know, don't aim for perfection. And contracts aren't written in stone. We can always recontract for changes, because purpose changes, teams change, situations change. So why can't contracts change? Therefore, they should be flexible. And for the psychological, one of the more important things is around check for equality and power. And I heard a lot about that in some of the examples. You know, they want me to go and make people agile. Well, you know, you've got an equality and power situation right there. You know, and sometimes it's okay to make mistakes. It's all right to, you know, be vulnerable in a contract. I think contracts are a place of great vulnerability, but also a place of great strength. Vulnerability, because you're putting your cards on the table, And the strength is about that someone can and often does meet you where you are. So, and if you don't put your cards on the table, then they're never going to be met. There's no point. So I hope you found this useful. You can have a look at this stuff. And John and I are really interested in, for those of you that are still here with us and have been putting up with my internet issues, thank you for that. What's the one thing that you'll be taking away from today's session? You can stick it in a chat if you wish to, or you can just unmute yourself.
So we're seeing things coming through. Yeah, sounds like these approaches are valid and useful. When there's a web call, have John ready to have your back. K formula and TA. Interesting. Focus on psychological questions and the unspoken. Cool. Yeah.
As tough as it is to talk about the psychological, the more you do it, the easier there it gets, and you'll find yourself walking through less treacle. The tone of your contract or how your contract is set up sets the tone for how the work is going to go. So if there is avoidance in your contract, notice the avoidance in your work.
Cool. Yes, so we have overran. Thank you for working together tonight and today on this. I was just thinking, if we want to do a photo op, it's not going to work. You know what? Let's not do a photo op. It's not enough time. Let's keep on going. I just want to say thank you. And any question, I've gone the wrong way around, Nims. I'm just going to do the last bit first. This is me. You've probably seen me. You've probably seen random things on Scrum Lake on LinkedIn. I have Scrum Lake COP workshops for Scrum Masters where we work together and sort of explore and basically work through tough things together. It's a bit like a global COP. Also doing serious Scrum Road to Mastery training. Got Scrum Masters workshops, and I also do individual agile coaching and training with Scrum Masters and product owners, and I've got other things available. So those are some of my things. Nim, do you want to do your bit maybe?
Yeah, so I work in very much this way. Everything that I do is underpinned by TA, and I bring my TA knowledge and experience into my client work. So whether that be kind of holding specific workshops, so ones I've done are around psychological games, contracting and drivers. I help clients design their teams or organizations using org design. I use kind of liberating structures, use storytelling to help understand and define or kind of articulate what the culture and the narrative, what's the narrative and personality of an organization. And I do kind of many other custom pieces and workshops. So that's a little bit about me.
Cool. And I think we're out of time, but if people want to go, clearly go, but I'm happy to take questions or happy to hang around as well if people want to, but I'm going to stop. Can we stop the video, the recording? Would that be okay?
Just before we stop, I just wanted to mention to everybody on the 13th of September, so it's another Monday, that's our next session, and it's Michael and Audrey Sahota, and the conversation they're bringing to us is leading beyond change from servant leadership to evolutionary leadership. Should be a good one. So make sure you sign up. We'll get an email out there so you can just click and sign up. So thank you for joining. John, back to you for your questions.
Thank you. So I'm just going to stop recording.